Hello, everyone, and welcome to On the Safe Side, a monthly podcast hosted by the editors of Safety+Health magazine, the official magazine of the National Safety Council. This is Barry Botino, associate editor at Safety+Health, and with me, as always, are my fellow associate editors, Kevin Drewley and Alan Ferguson. Greetings, guys.
Hey there, Barry.
Hi, Barry.
Well, thank you all for joining us for this February 2025 episode, which is number 60 in our podcast's history. And this month's episode is sponsored by KPA. For many of you in the safety profession, your career path has been a unique journey. We'd like to hear all about it for our My Story feature in the magazine. Submit a personal story or encourage a safety colleague to do so by emailing us at safehealth@nsc.org. In this month's episode, we'll examine some of the top headlines from the February issue of Safety+Health. We'll be joined this month by Kate Crawford, the Senior Research Manager for Workplace Safety Programs at NSC, in our 5 Questions With segment. Kate will discuss tips and guidance to ensure the successful adoption of safety technology. And we'll get you caught up on some of the news you might have missed in our aptly named In Case You Missed It segment. Is everybody ready? Away we go! In this month's In This Issue segment, we begin by sharing details about our annual profiles of the CEOs who get it. This year's 6 honorees share how they set a high bar for safety in their organizations. These CEOs value safety to the point that they communicated about it regularly with their employees, explaining the why behind treating safety as a key value. By reading their profiles, you'll learn that these leaders aren't quiet about their passion for safety. Through words and actions, they make safety and their people a high priority. Alan has put together a tech trends story focused on the highs and lows of adopting a new safety technology. 2 safety and health experts, friend of the podcast Cam Stevens, and our NSC colleague Kate Crawford, share their tips and advice on how organizations should approach the adoption of tech tools, along with challenges that workers should anticipate. Stevens and Crawford also share how organizations can gauge the effectiveness of a new safety technology. This issue of Safety and Health also has plenty more to offer, and you can find it in your mailbox or online at safetyandhealthmagazine.com.
Want to transform workplace safety while boosting productivity? KPA's award-winning EHS software and training can help organizations like yours achieve remarkable results. A 70% decrease in incident rates and triple the productivity, all while cutting paperwork by 90%. The mobile-friendly KPA Flex platform, backed by 40 years of expertise, makes it easy to build a culture of safety and compliance. Join industry leaders who trust KPA to protect their people and their business. Visit kpa.io today to learn more. Technological innovations are an ever-present part of our lives, and many of those innovations have made their way into the safety world. With us to talk about safety technology is Kate Crawford, Senior Research Manager for Workplace Safety Programs at the National Safety Council. Kate, thank you so much for joining us on the Safe Side.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to have the discussion today.
Starting off, what do organizations need to consider before taking the leap on a new safety technology or making a change in their current safety technology?
That's a great question. I think there's a lot of considerations. A lot of times what we talk about, though, is one of the critical key first steps is accurate problem identification. So really having a clear understanding of the hazards that your workers are facing in your organization, what risk factors are contributing to those hazards, what's contributing to serious incidents and injuries in your workplace. And understanding what your workers need help with. So before looking at the safety technology, it's really trying to identify that problem, understand what you need to address with technology, because without a clear understanding of that problem, you're going to get lost when you start moving on to the next steps. So I think that's a big first step.
What questions should employers ask, or what do they need to research before making a change?
Questions you should ask to your tech provider. So when you're looking for solution providers for new technologies, there's a lot of questions you should ask those folks. So things like ease of use and ease of implementation, trying to understand those aspects. Certainly costs, understanding the costs associated with technology is a big one, not just upfront costs, but ongoing costs, maintenance costs, subscriptions, things like that. Another big question to ask is kind of what are you getting from it? What kind of data is your tech going to generate? How are you going to use that to evaluate your process? Additional questions regarding data is, how is it stored and how is it secured within your organization? You also want to think about how are you going to use that data and how are you not going to use that data? Those are important questions to ask. So kind of a lot of conversations both inside the organization and outside the organization.
Kate, I'm curious, what challenges or barriers should organizations anticipate before bringing in a new technology, and how can they overcome those challenges?
Yeah, I think barriers to implementation, that's really where we spend a lot of time with our research here at the National Safety Council, really trying to address those because it's different for everybody. Different organizations are going to have different characteristics, different issues and challenges that they face. Certainly, depending on the technology, there's going to be different things. So it's difficult to give specific answers, but kind of speaking broadly about some of the barriers that we know organizations should think about are thinking again back to how is this going to impact your workforce? What do your workers think about this? Are they kind of reluctant to have those changes made? If they don't understand how this aligns with the business value and kind of what the need is, what the ultimate goal is for the technology, that can create a barrier when it comes to using it. We also talk about barriers in terms of those support systems I mentioned. So existing operations, legacy IT infrastructure, what is in place and is that going to be able to be adapted to the new technology? Another barrier that we've seen come up when talking to companies is kind of a concern over error or loss of productivity during initial phases of technology. And that can actually really make it challenging for implementation. A lot of organizations you have to find an ability to let yourself fail a little bit and really focus on learning agility and how can you learn and adapt to these processes and not getting too caught up in kind of immediate ROI or changes that could end up hindering progress.
I know there's generally not a one-size-fits-all answer for this, but in what ways can organizations gauge how well a technological change is working for them?
That is a great question, and you really kind of hit on it. It's not a one size fits all, certainly. So a big part of the planning process, the preparation process, is looking at your organization and thinking about what you need. What does success look like to you? What does success look like to your organization? What are those internal return on investment factors that you can start tracking? And so sometimes those are, tangible. Sometimes they're a little more intangible, but certainly we look at impact on safety in terms of, are we seeing a reduction in injuries? Are we seeing reductions in near misses or first aids? Kind of some of those traditional metrics. But then also thinking about safety culture, is there a change in the safety culture? Are people feeling more safe? Are they more engaged in safety practices? Looking at adoption of the technology, are people using it? Are they providing feedback? Sometimes if we're looking at maybe it's reduced absenteeism, improved productivity, depending on what the technology is and what it's doing, I think there's a lot of things you can look at, but really taking the time to kind of pull those pieces out up front is going to be critical when creating your own evaluation plan. Another one we've seen that people use is just exposure hours, kind of coming up with their own metrics. So, are you reducing time that people are exposed to those things? So you can also track things that way. Certainly, it's not just looking at injuries, but there's other things you can pull out.
Finally, Kate, what are some helpful resources for employers?
Well, I will say at the National Safety Council, with our Work to Zero program, that's really that's our main focus at the Work to Zero program. We develop resources to help employers adopt technology, and we have a suite of resources available on our website, and you can go to nsc.org/work-to-zero to look at those. We have organized them into something we call the Safety Innovation Journey. So it really goes through all these steps that we've kind of been touching on. So starting off with that hazard identification, we've got some online tools and we have a lot of resources specific to that. So you can go in and answer questions about your organization to really kind of dig into what your specific hazards are and what you might be looking to solve with technology. And then the next step for identifying tech solutions, we have a lot of resources on those. We have some resources that map technology solutions to those hazards. So if you do your hazard assessment, you find out, really where I'm looking at, I need to look at work at heights as an example. Then we have resources that say, here are the different technologies that are available that people have been using in the workplace to address work at height. And these are the different ways that we come at it. And thinking to the hierarchy of controls, is it something where eliminating the hazard, like with a drone, keeping someone's feet on the ground? Or is it something different? We have a case study with a company that was using computer vision and AI and visual analytics to identify when there was work at height hazards. So all these different ways that you can go after specific hazards. The next step, we have resources related to digital readiness. So that's another online tool, questions you can answer specific to your organization to get at some of those pieces I mentioned about, are you ready for this? Is your workforce ready? Who are your stakeholders? What conversations have you been having? What do you need to have? Things like that. We also have resources related to making the business case. So certainly knowing that cost is a barrier, understanding kind of what the potential return on investment could be depending on the type of technology you have. We have calculators that can help you kind of put some numbers in there and get some estimates on those materials to help you understand how to make those business cases when you're presenting to, executives or decision makers. And then finally, kind of when you're ready to go, we have this pilot and implementation roadmap that will take you through these different stages of planning and preparation, evaluation, continuous improvement, really trying to set organizations up to be successful when they're adopting technology.
Well, Kate, thank you so much for sharing your insights with our audience. We appreciate you joining us here on the Safe Side.
Thanks so much for having me.
February returns to its customary 28 days in this non-leap year, but there's no less occupational safety and health news to digest in this or any month. With that, there may be some items that may have escaped your notice, and for that, we offer our In Case You Missed It segment. I'll start. Well, this one I recall filing it to our editors and saying that I apologize for going whole hog, pun intended, on the length. There's a lot to unpack here, and I'll try to kind of do that succinctly, but it's recently was announced by the Department of Labor that the USDA had done separate studies on poultry and pork processing workers in plants. And we've covered that angle through the years, mostly from the line speed question. And that comes into play here, the idea of whether faster line speeds than are established during federal regulations are safer. And there's a lot of debate there. But for this, it was found that while these increased line speeds did impact musculoskeletal disorders, it was not the kind of the quote unquote leading impact. So they did impact them, but they weren't the predominant one. So that kind of reignited some of the debate with these waivers with line speeds and such. But while that's all in there for you to unpack online or in the magazine, there also are some important takeaways for employers that we can discuss here. And some of those, again, with an eye on reducing musculoskeletal disorders, injuries through these processing workers. One idea is to increase staffing and mitigate the impact of this repetitive work that's contributing to MSDs. Another suggestion was to improve medical management programs that assess ongoing pain as a metric of exposure to ergonomic risk. Employers also can be called to promote a safety culture that encourages reporting of pain and discourages retaliation or consequences for reporting. There also were sort of some engineer control ideas in there about best practices for knife and scissor sharpening and maintenance and replacement, just making sure that these tools that you're using are the most efficient at the time you're using them. So, again, that's all out there with the USDA pork, poultry, and pork processing reports. Alan, what's a can't miss piece of news that you've noticed this month?
So there was a big announcement for the National Safety Council recently. OSHA has joined NSC's Road to Zero coalition, and that coalition seeks to end deaths on the road by 2050. And as of the most recent Bureau of Labor Statistics data, roadway deaths accounted for nearly 2,000 occupational fatalities in 2023, or around 37% of the nearly 5,300 workplace deaths overall in the United States that year. NSC President and CEO Lorraine Martin said, by joining Road to Zero, OSHA strengthens our ability to protect workers both on and off the job. Together, we can create safer roads for everyone, whether they are driving for work or sharing the roads with those who do. Barry, what about you?
Well, Alan, I want to take us to the construction industry. There's a collaborative research effort underway that I wrote about for Safety and Health, and it's a group that's building a toolkit that will help construction managers, supervisors, and workers identify and address the safety and health challenges that are unique to construction. This project is called the Collaborative Leadership for Safety and Health in Construction, and it's being led by a research group from the Colorado School of Public Health and the Center for Promotion of Health in the New England Workplace. And it has some kind of heavy hitters who are supporting it as well, along with NIOSH and the CDC. Another group that's supporting this effort is CPWR, the Center for Construction Research and Training. This is a 5-year project, and what researchers are going to do is they're going to work with a number of folks in the industry, anyone from workers to safety professionals to labor unions to academia, and they're going to put a toolkit together, and they will then kind of have 8 contractors implement that toolkit. And that's when the research will really start taking place. Researchers are going to evaluate how the toolkit works and how employers can benefit from it. After that, after it's finalized, it will then be disseminated out to OSHA, labor unions, contractor associations, and whatnot. One of the leaders of the Colorado School of Public Health said, this project is creating a framework that gives both managers and supervisors and workers a more active role in the safety and well-being initiatives at their workplace. So really interesting project that's going on.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you both for a great discussion as always. We remind listeners to please stay tuned to safetyandhealthmagazine.com and our social media channels for all the latest news and updates. Is there something you want to make sure that we didn't miss? Please email us at safehealth@nsc.org.
A business can have a fleet with just one vehicle, or 1,001 vehicles, or even more. Ensuring the safety of those vehicles, and especially the workers who operate them, should be a priority for any organization. From March 3rd through March 9th, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration will conduct its annual Vehicle Safety Recall Week. And joining us this month to talk about those efforts and the National Safety Council's own program, known as Check to Protect, is our NSC colleague Lonnie Haschel, who's a Senior Program Manager, Mobility Safety. Lonnie, thanks for being with us on the Safe Side this month.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. Lonnie, let's talk regarding open safety recalls. Why is this an important issue for employers to recognize and to address?
We've got a couple of things for people to think about. Number one, the employer themselves, their own vehicles. There's 57 million vehicles in the United States that have open safety recalls. In California, for example, they have just in their own state 6.1 million vehicles that have open safety recalls. So it's a really important issue for all drivers, all passengers, but for businesses in particular, We could be looking at financial issues. There can be downtime or potential loss of productivity or even revenue because the vehicle had a recall and perhaps the fleet manager or whoever manages those vehicles didn't know about the recall and it broke down. Another issue you could run into is brand reputation. There could be negative perceptions if a safety issue arises or is mishandled and gets into maybe a litigation situation with an employee, or if you get into a situation where you have appointments set up and now you can't get there because the vehicle is down. So it can play several different ways. Another one to think about is if you own a fleet of vehicles, what's our most important asset as an employer? It's the employee. And if the employee is not aware that they have a recall on their vehicle, that can lead to possible injury or downtime as well. So we encourage business owners, fleet managers to not only check the company vehicles, but to push information to the folks at home because we have that most important asset, that employee that we need to get to work. And then that employee probably has family members. So we can be looking at insurance claims and such. So it just keeps snowballing into many different aspects and how this can impact a business.
So, Lonnie, how do both Vehicle Safety Recall Week and Check to Protect work to alleviate those recalls? Can you explain those two things?
Absolutely. So Vehicle Safety Recall Week is on the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's calendar of events for the week. They try to highlight different safety things throughout the calendar year. National Safety Council, nonprofit, we are here to amplify and support what they do. And because of those 57 million vehicles that are out there, the National Safety Council saw this as an issue. We needed to dedicate a single program to it to try to raise awareness. We target vehicles that are a little bit older. So you buy a new car and you take it to a dealership and it gets sold to somebody else. And then John buys it and John sells it to Sally and Sally sells it to Frida. And by then the DMV or the automaker lose track of who has that. So that owner may not be aware that they have a vehicle with a recalled airbag that could explode in their face. If we have a business, for example, that buys 2 or 3 different vehicles from maybe a used car dealer, they may not be aware that there are brake issues with those vehicles if they bought a pre-owned car. So we work hand in hand with NHTSA, and the Check to Protect angle is just a website. That's all it is, checktoprotect.org. And we encourage people to go there and enter either the license plate, a picture of the license plate, the VIN of the vehicle, or a picture of the VIN. And you'll get results within 7 to 10 seconds if that vehicle has a recall. And if there are fleet owners or fleet managers out there, and you have in your introduction, you said 1,000 vehicles, you can go to our partner webpage, which is Carfax, and you can upload up to 10,000 VINs at one time and get one report on all of those vehicles. And that all those links are right on checkprotect.org.
Excellent. That's a great tool, Lonnie. Finally, I wanted to ask you if you could tell our listeners, obviously you mentioned checktoprotect.org. Are there any other resources regarding the efforts of both NHTSA and NSC that you could share?
Both NHTSA has a recall webpage as well. Just go to nhtsa.gov and /recalls. There you can enter the VIN or the license plate. Ours a little bit easier to manage because we're a much smaller entity and we're not the government. We heard from tribal nations and U.S. military across the country that a lot of their vehicles are not tied to the Department of Motor Vehicles in their particular state. So that's why we added the picture feature. So it makes it very easy for people to go out and just take a picture of the license plate, upload it, boom, and then you get those results very, very quickly. All kinds of resources, both on the NHTSA page and then again, checktoprotect.org. Just squish that all together and enter it into a search engine. On the main page, you'll see where you can enter the license plate or the VIN. And at the top, you have resources. You click on there, and there's everything from social media to talking points to press releases to digital assets, all kinds of things that you can use in your business to try to push that message and maybe reach not only your employees, but maybe their family members as well.
Great. Well, Lonnie, we thank you so much for the discussion today, and we appreciate you being with us on the Safe Side this month.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you so much for joining us for this month's episode of On the Safe Side. We know your time is valuable, and we appreciate you spending some of it with us, wherever you're listening. We encourage you to visit our website, safetyandhealthmagazine.com/podcasts, to check out any of our past episodes. That includes episode 30, in which we explore Alan's feature story covering effective incident investigations, and have an insightful interview with employment law attorney Faye Caldwell about the legal issues surrounding impairment in the workplace. A special thank you goes out to this episode's sponsor, KPA. The original music for this podcast was composed by Steve Maslin. Thank you so much, Steve. And a big thanks to all of our NSC colleagues behind the scenes who helped make this podcast go. We'll be back next month to have more safety-related discussions, talk to trusted voices from around the profession, and hopefully make you smile a little. In the meantime, please stay on the safe side.